I decided to marry Isabella Vance when I was 8 years old. Isabella loved to ride horses, so I learned to ride, mastering dressage and show jumping just to be by her side. When Isabella went through a phase of loving martial arts, I begged my father to find me the best combat instructor in the country. I trained with him every day from dawn until dusk. I did everything in my power to become the man I thought she wanted. But she fell in love with a man who was my polar opposite. Our family's arrangement was ironclad, so instead, I married her quiet, overlooked sister. Then at my own welcome home gala, Isabella got drunk and blocked my car. "Ethan Cole," she slurred, "you know you love me." I squeezed her sister's hand in mine and said coolly, "Isabella, the only person I love now is my wife." 1. Isabella Vance fell for Julian Rios, a poet from some forgotten, run-down neighborhood south of the river. Julian came from nothing. He had 2 sick, aging parents and a good-for-nothing older brother who was a connoisseur of cheap bars and back-alley gambling. Whenever his brother skipped out on a debt, the loan sharks would come after Julian, cornering him on the street. One day, Isabella was out for a ride on her chestnut mare when she passed a crowded coffee shop hosting an open mic night. A handsome, sharp-featured young man stood in the spotlight, reciting poetry full of melancholic angst. An eagle with clipped wings, grounded with the sparrows. This soul finds no rest. A decade of ambition turning to dust. A life mortgaged to the sky. In this ocean of existence, I fear a final, hollow echo. Isabella was instantly captivated by the talented, brooding artist. She reined in her horse, wondering how to approach him. Suddenly, a few burly men stormed into the cafe and grabbed the defenseless poet. They were there to collect on his brother's debts. Isabella ordered her security detail to intervene. She saved Julian, paid off all his family's debts, and even pulled strings to get his brother a steady job. She introduced Julian to her father, Senator Vance, hoping he could get him a position, a fellowship, anything. But before the senator could even voice his disapproval, Julian spoke first. "I appreciate the offer, Ms. Vance, but man makes his own way in this world. I don't take handouts. I'll earn my own future." He turned and walked out. The Vances were impressed by his supposed integrity. Isabella constantly told her father how brilliant Julian was, destined for a Pulitzer Prize. The senator, who doted on his daughter and followed her every whim, started to believe it. He began to think, what's an overlooked son from a messy divorce compared to a future literary star? So, the senator tacitly approved of Isabella's actions. Isabella never did things by halves. With her father's unspoken support, she moved Julian into the family's guest house in Potomac so he could focus on his writing. She pulled her new love out of the mud, but in doing so, she forgot all about me. The Vances and the Coles had a long-standing arrangement, brokered by a former president. It was understanding, not just a promise. I was 2 years older than Isabella. The year she was born, at a major political gala, news broke of a diplomatic victory overseas. The president, in a celebratory mood, wanted to cement the alliance between 2 of his key allies. My father, the newly appointed Secretary of State, and a Senator Vance, whose daughter had just been born. He proposed a future union, sealing our family's fates. The story of Isabella Vance hiding a poet in her guest house spread through Washington, D.C. like wildfire. The gossip blogs had a field day. Ethan Cole, the eldest son of the Secretary of State, became a laughingstock. My father was furious. He wanted to call the senator and formally dissolve the arrangement. My stepmother rushed in, whispering calming words to him. Later, my father summoned me to his study. He practiced his calligraphy, saying nothing as the ink bled onto the paper. I understood what he couldn't say. The Cole-Vance alliance was politically invaluable, and canceling an agreement endorsed by a former president would be a public slap in the face to a powerful man. More importantly, while I was the eldest son, I wasn't his son with my stepmother. After my wedding, I would be expected to establish my own household, separate from the family's main line of succession. I wasn't worth jeopardizing the entire Cole family's political future over. My father's silence was my stepmother's victory. The family legacy belonged to her son, and she would protect it at all costs. Since my own mother died, no one had ever truly put my interests first. That's why, at 8 years old, when Isabella pulled me from the water, I decided I had to marry her. She was the one person who had ever saved me. The character my father painted was Patience. I told him I would go see Isabella myself. He nodded, set down his brush, and waved me away. I want to see Isabella. We were close, practically engaged. I used to walk into the Vance estate without ever being announced. This time, the butler stopped me, asking me to wait in the foyer. I waited for nearly 2 hours. Finally, a maid came out. Ms. Vance is feeling unwell today and isn't seeing visitors. Perhaps another time, Mr. Cole. I'm not the type to cause a scene. It was still early, so I let my driver take me over to the guest house. I wanted to see him for myself. This Julian Rios. I wanted to see the man who had made my fiancée forget our engagement, forget all sense of propriety, and who had somehow won the approval of Senator Vance himself. The guest house was buzzing with more staff than usual. A few of them recognized me and let me pass without question. In the backyard, under a grape arbor, was a new writing desk. On it were expensive pens and a custom-embossed leather notebook that must have cost a fortune. I heard voices from the study. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. The two people inside stared at me. The man at the desk had to be Julian. A young woman, a maid, stood beside him, refilling his coffee. I ignored their questioning looks, found a comfortable armchair, and sat, running my thumb over the wooden beads of my bracelet as I sized him up. He was handsome, no doubt. A little thin, but he carried himself with a certain confidence. I could see the appeal. The maid, seeing my expensive suit, hurried over to offer me a drink. A sharp girl. The property manager rushed in. Mr. Cole, I didn't realize you were coming. Ms. Vance isn't here today. He shot a look at Julian. Mr. Rios, this is Mr. Ethan Cole. Julian stood up immediately to greet me, but before he could speak, someone else burst in. The unwell Isabella. Her face was a mask of cold fury. She planted herself in front of Julian, shielding him. Ethan, whatever you have a problem with, you take it up with me. The son of the Secretary of State harassing a writer. How pathetic can you get? I was stunned. I opened my mouth and closed it. After a moment, I turned to the manager. Have I harassed him? The manager looked at the floor. No, sir. I looked at the man being shielded. Have I harassed you? He gently moved Isabella's arms aside. Bella, what are you doing? You're misunderstanding the situation. Bella. The intimacy of it was a punch to the gut. I stared at him. On the surface, he was defending me. In reality, it was a declaration of war. Everyone in D.C. knew about the Cole-Vance arrangement. To use that name, in front of me, was an unmistakable power play. A blush crept up Isabella's cheeks. I couldn't tell if it was from the shame of misjudging me or the thrill of hearing Julian call her Bella. I knew what she was worried about. I was still her fiancé, officially. With my family's influence, I could ruin Julian Rios with a single phone call, and no one would dare question it. But I, Ethan Cole, had my own pride. I just wanted to see what kind of man I had lost to. I had waited 2 hours for her at the main house, giving her every chance to be civil. She ignored me. But the moment Julian was in perceived danger, she appeared in an instant to protect him. In that moment, it all felt so pointless. The entire decade I'd spent loving her suddenly felt like a waste. I had imagined our life together countless times. We had the right families, similar interests, a bond blessed by the highest powers in the country. It was a perfect match. We would have so many dinners together, raise a few kids, teach them how to talk, to walk, to read. It would have been a perfect life. But none of it mattered if she didn't love me. Fine. A decision crystallized in my mind. I clenched my jaw, a bitter taste filling my mouth. The effort made my voice tremble slightly. Isabella, do you remember the arrangement between our families? She looked embarrassed, glancing at Julian before answering. Of course, but it's complicated. I cut her off, my voice flat. Besides you, the senator has another daughter, doesn't he? If I recall, she has the same birthday. The agreement was for a daughter of the Vance family. The second daughter is still a daughter of the Vance family. That wouldn't be breaking the spirit of the deal. I stood up straight, my hands clenched into fists inside my pockets. I smiled and said the last thing I ever wanted to say to Isabella Vance. Since the arrangement is unavoidable, I'll marry your sister. 3. I had loved Isabella Vance for years. I first met her when she was 6 and I was 8. It was less than half a year after my mother's death. my father had remarried, and the reception was a massive affair attended by everyone who was anyone in D.C. The party was loud and extravagant. No one noticed me. No one cared. I cried myself to sleep by the edge of the koi pond and accidentally rolled into the water. Through the haze, I heard a little girl's voice. "Somebody, get the big fish out of the pond." The big fish they pulled out was me. I felt my sinking body grow light. My vision cleared, and I saw a little girl in a pink dress, her eyes wide and bright, looking down at me with innocent curiosity. I was soaked, missing a shoe, and utterly terrified. Seeing me shiver, she tried to comfort me like an adult. "It's okay, mister. Don't be scared. Claire will take you to your mommy." At the mention of mommy, I started crying all over again. She frantically tried to wipe my tears, thinking I was hurt and offering to call a doctor. Thankfully, my nanny found me, thanked the little girl, and hurried me away. Later, I learned my rescuer was Isabella Vance. My father was too busy with his new wife to be bothered with a report of his son falling into a pond. He never knew I'd been saved, so no official thanks were ever sent to the Vance family. But that kind, lovely girl was forever etched in my mind. When I turned 15, my father told me that the president had suggested a match between me and the Vance daughter years ago. I was so happy I couldn't sleep all night. At the time, there was only one Vance daughter that mattered. The second daughter, Claire Vance, was the child of the senator's mistress, born only a few hours after Isabella on the same day. Her existence had been kept a secret from the senator's wife for years. It was only after the mistress died that the senator's mother, the family matriarch, insisted Claire be brought into the Vance household. She was raised by her grandmother, officially acknowledged but always kept in the shadows. Since the mistress was gone and a lone girl posed no threat to the inheritance of the legitimate children, the senator's wife allowed it. Only the families closest to the Vances knew about Claire. To the rest of D.C., she was practically invisible. Back then, my world revolved around Isabella. I never even noticed her. Isabella said she loved to ride, that one day she wanted to travel the country on horseback with the man she loved. So I poured myself into equestrianism, just to have a reason to be near her. My hands were covered in blisters from the reins. I was thrown more times than I could count, nearly breaking my leg once, but I never shed a tear. When Isabella took up martial arts, I begged my father to hire the best coach he could find. I trained relentlessly, neglecting everything else, and actually became quite skilled. I had planned to tell her all of this on our wedding night, but that was before. For when my father heard I intended to marry the second Vance daughter, he paused, the teacup halfway to his lips, and set it back down. He was silent for a long time. My stepmother, however, was enthusiastic. My marrying Claire was the perfect solution. First, the Vances were at fault, so they would have to agree. Second, it fulfilled the political arrangement without embarrassing the former president. And third, the sooner I was married and out of the house, the sooner her own son's path to inheriting the family fortune and political capital would be clear. She was naturally delighted. My father understood all this, of course. He felt a pang of guilt. I had lost my mother young, and he had failed to give me the attention I needed. Now, he was allowing me to be publicly humiliated. For a moment, he felt a flicker of paternal regret. After a long silence, he asked slowly, "Are you sure?" "I've made my decision. I won't change it." The next day, my stepmother went to the Vance estate herself and finalized the new arrangement. The Vances, deeply in the wrong, agreed immediately. All that was left was to set a date for my wedding to Claire Vance. My stepmother did one other thing. She leaked the story to the press, framing it as a romantic twist. The narrative she spun was that the Vances had another daughter, a quiet, delicate girl who had been raised in the gentle climate of the South for her health and had only recently returned to D.C. Therefore, the story went, Ethan Cole was not marrying the now notorious Isabella, but the demure and sheltered younger sister. I knew my stepmother was only protecting the Cole family name, but I was still grateful. She had restored a measure of my dignity. Her previous actions, I reasoned, were all to protect her own son. If my mother were still alive, wouldn't she have done the same for me? Before a date could be set, however, an urgent military situation developed overseas. Karastan, a nation that had been quiet for years, suddenly launched an aggressive incursion into a neighboring Allied territory. The regional commander, General Harrison, was barely holding the line. It was clear the attack was premeditated and well-supplied. Without reinforcements, the front would collapse. A new task force was being deployed, with General Harrison in command. But they still needed an executive officer, and finding the right person was proving difficult for the president. The position required someone with a certain political standing. Yet, the sons of prominent families were unwilling to take a subordinate role, seeing it as playing second fiddle. And appointing someone with a low rank would fail to command the respect of the troops. The moon hung high in the sky as I stood in the courtyard, my mind racing. As things stood, I had two paths. I could bury myself in books, go to law school, and try to build a career on my own merits. But I had spent so many years focused on Isabella that my academic record was mediocre at best. That path would be a long, hard climb. Or I could accept my father's arrangements and take a comfortable, meaningless position in some government agency, living out a quiet life. Is this all my life was going to be? I closed my eyes in despair. Images flashed through my mind. Isabella's coldness, my father's disappointment, my stepmother's indifference, Senator Vance's contempt. My eyes snapped open. I refused to live a life of mediocrity. 2 days later, the executive officer for the reinforcement task force was announced. The army would deploy immediately. The day before I left, I went to the Vance estate to say goodbye to my fiancée. I waited in the formal living room. A young woman descended the grand staircase. I had seen her from a distance on previous visits, but with my eyes only for Isabella, I had never paid her any mind. As she approached, she gave me a gentle curtsy, her face tinged with a shy blush. Claire's beauty was a world away from her sister's. Isabella's was aggressive, almost sharp when she was angry. Claire's was a quiet, graceful beauty, like a gentle wave on a spring morning that soothed the soul. When she heard I was deploying as the XO to the front in Karastan, I saw her brow furrow slightly with worry. My heart clenched. I quickly clarified my intentions. I'm not doing this to avoid marrying you. It's the opposite. I want to earn something for myself, to give you a better life. I promise, when I come back with a victory, I'll give you the grandest wedding has ever seen. Her delicate eyebrows relaxed, and my own heart felt lighter. But her expression remained laced with concern. Before I left, I handed her an envelope I had prepared. She looked at it, confused. It's a signed letter, releasing you from our engagement. If I don't make it back, you don't have to wait for me. Find a good man and be happy. A flash of anger crossed her face. She snatched the letter and tore it to pieces. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at me, her voice choked with emotion. You have to come back. I'll wait for you. I'll pray for you every single day. My heart suddenly melted. No one had ever shed a tear for me before. I had come prepared for anything, for her resentment, her anger, even her refusal to marry me. I never expected her to worry about me, to care for me, to be willing to wait. Perhaps those who have never been loved understand its value most. I felt a deep sense of relief. This kind, beautiful girl would one day be my wife. The army was about to move out. I mounted my horse, a powerful black stallion named Zephyr. I had chosen him at the same royal stables where Isabella had picked her dainty mare back when I was still trying to keep up with her equestrian hobby. The journey to the deployment zone was brutal. It was early spring, and the melting snow turned the roads into a muddy quagmire. The wind wasn't as biting as in winter, but at a full gallop, it still felt like needles on your skin. We traveled day and night, subsisting on rations. It took us 28 days to reach the forward operating base. On our first night, the enemy attacked. General Harrison had been fighting a defensive war for weeks. The Koristanis likely assumed the reinforcements would be exhausted from the march and tried to press their advantage. It was my first time in combat, and I was disoriented. My martial arts training was one thing, but real battle was different. This was close-quarters chaos, where every swing of a sword was meant to kill, with no form or finesse. We couldn't retreat. Behind us was the base, our only stronghold. To fall back would be to invite disaster. We had to hold our ground in the open field, not giving an inch. I quickly found my rhythm. My training kicked in, an instinct taking over. I charged into the enemy ranks, my blade a blur, each movement precise and deadly. It was my first battle, a brutal initiation. All I could do was kill. We fought until we were exhausted, until the world was a red haze. It felt like every ounce of strength was gone, yet the enemy seemed endless. My uniform was soaked in blood, mostly not my own. I took a slash to the shoulder, but it was just a flesh wound. The battle raged for a full day. Neither side gained an advantage. Spring turned to fall. For 10 months, we were locked in a cycle of skirmishes and full-scale assaults. Sometimes they ambushed us. Sometimes we launched our own offensives. During that time, I received a steady stream of letters from Claire. She asked if I was safe and filled the pages with details from her life. She told me the embroidery on her wedding dress was nearly done, except for the sleeves. She told me she had made wine from the grapes in her garden and had saved a special bottle for me. She sent me a short poem she had written. They were small, simple things, but she shared them with me in meticulous detail, and I read every word over and over again. When I had time, I wrote back. I never mentioned the brutality of the war. I wrote about the fierce wind, the sweet desert fruit, and the wildflowers that bloomed across the vast plains. I often thought back to the day I said goodbye, to the tears she shed for me. I wished I had hugged her then. Sometimes I found myself thinking of Isabella. Was the decade I spent loving her real love? How could she have been so careless with my feelings? But as time went on, I thought of her less and less. She never wrote to me. Not once. My father sent one letter, a formal inquiry about my well-being. Nothing more. With winter approaching, General Harrison decided we would launch a final, decisive offensive before the new year. The goal was to push the Korestani forces back at least 10 miles from our base. None of us knew then what the outcome of that attack would be. We launched our assault before dawn. To deceive the enemy, we had feigned an attack the previous day. They wouldn't expect another one so soon, especially in the dead of night. At first, they were caught off guard, but they regrouped quickly, and it looked like the battle would end in another stalemate. The sun was fully up, and I was still fighting in the thick of it. As I cut my way through the enemy lines, I noticed a small group of soldiers who seemed to be subconsciously protecting a young soldier in their midst. He looked no older than 16. His uniform was that of a common foot soldier, but it was suspiciously clean. He was being shielded. I had studied military strategy. I knew that the general in gilded armor on a magnificent horse was often a decoy. The real prize was sometimes hidden in plain sight. This boy had to be someone important. Once I had my target, I began to cut a circular path toward him, careful not to alert them. I took down 2 more soldiers, broke through their protective circle, and snatched the boy. I whistled for Zephyr, hoisted the boy onto the saddle, and spurred my horse into a nearby grove of trees. A squad of enemy soldiers gave chase. But men on foot are no match for a horse, especially after a long day of fighting. He struggled at first, but a sharp blow to the back of his neck knocked him unconscious. Moments after I brought my captive back to the command tent, the enemy sounded the retreat. Their withdrawal was so sudden, so inexplicable, that I had a strong feeling it was connected to the boy I had captured. I explained the situation to General Harrison. We both realized this young soldier could be a key figure. Under interrogation, he remained silent. The general didn't resort to torture, instead placing him in secure confinement. Sure enough, 3 hours later, a Korestani envoy arrived to negotiate. The terms they offered were astonishingly generous. They not only agreed to a full withdrawal, but also pledged not to encroach on Allied territory for 10 years. Furthermore, they offered a massive indemnity payment in livestock and gold. They had only one condition, the return of their prisoner. We knew it had to be the boy. He was likely a prince. Korastan had 5 princes, with the eldest and the third being the main rivals for the throne. Based on his age, our captive had to be the 3rd prince, trying to earn military glory to gain an edge in the succession crisis. News of the enemy's surrender was sent by express courier back to Washington. The president was ecstatic, and he readily accepted the terms. General Harrison signed the peace treaty himself. With the treaty signed, we began our journey home. Another diplomat would be sent to oversee the transfer of the indemnity. The trip back to D.C. would take over a month. By the time we arrived, it would be just before the holidays. When I left, my heart was filled with uncertainty. I had thrown myself into the most dangerous place on earth for a chance at a future. Now, on my way back, my heart was light. General Harrison's report to the president named me as the sole reason for the enemy's surrender, crediting me with capturing the prince. A significant honor awaited me. As I rode Zephyr, his gait felt jaunty, and even the air seemed sweet. The cherry blossoms of D.C. never looked brighter, and the world felt like it was finally mine. In late December, our forces finally reached Washington, D.C. The streets were packed with cheering crowds. A massive banner hung over the city gates, flanked by drummers and musicians. As we entered, the Secretary of Defense lit a string of firecrackers. As the red paper fluttered down and the smoke cleared, it symbolized an end to the conflict. The music swelled as our column marched through the city gates. General Harrison led the way, with me on Zephyr at his side. The cheers of the crowd were deafening. I saw my father, stepmother, and brother in the crowd. My father's eyes were filled with tears of pride. I gave him a solemn nod. As we proceeded, a horse suddenly broke from the crowd on my left. It was Isabella. She rode alongside me, flashing a brilliant smile. "Ethan, you're finally back. I missed you so much." I looked at her, my face a mask of indifference. Her smile was as radiant as ever, as if there had never been any trouble between us, as if she had never stood in front of Julian Rios to protect him from me, as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. "Seven, seeing my silence, she said, "We'll talk after your gala. I have so much to tell you." She spurred her horse and disappeared back into the crowd. The parade ended at the White House. The president stood on the balcony. We dismounted and saluted. General Harrison's voice boomed. "Mr. President, on behalf of myself and Major Ethan Cole, I report that our forces are victorious. Carraston has surrendered." His powerful voice echoed across the square and throughout the city. The crowd erupted. A lump formed in my throat, my heart pounding like a drum. Thinking of the hardship we had endured, I was overcome with emotion. The president beamed. "At ease, soldiers. I hereby order a tribute for our triumphant army." The Welcome Home Gala was set for 3 days later, giving us time to rest and recover. The guest list included all senior officers, who were invited to bring their families. Back home, my family had prepared a lavish feast for me. My heroism had brought honor to the Cole name. The house was decorated extravagantly, more festive than it had been for my father's wedding. After a long, comfortable bath, my father called me to his study. He told me that the day before my arrival, someone from the Vance family had visited. It was Isabella's mother. The Vances now wished for me to honor the original arrangement and marry Isabella. After all, I was now a war hero with a new status. Claire, the daughter of a mistress, was hardly a suitable match anymore. The firstborn daughter, Isabella, was much more fitting. My father asked me, "What are your thoughts?" I had a feeling things weren't that simple. My mind was already made up. Before I left for the front, I made my decision. I will not change it. My father sighed deeply. "All right, I respect your choice." His eyes held a universe of unspoken words. I knew he wanted me to marry Isabella. Her father was a powerful senator. Her brothers held influential positions. Marrying her would be a tremendous benefit to me and to the Cole family. The daughter of a mistress brought nothing to the table. No status, no powerful family to back her. I knew all of this. But for once, I wanted to follow my own heart. I had been betrayed before. I understood the pain of it. How could I now betray the kind, gentle girl who had supported and encouraged me when I was at my lowest? Her wedding dress must be finished by now. The thought brought an involuntary smile to my lips. I slept soundly that night. I had important things to do the next day. The next morning, the Vances sent a car to invite me to their estate. Even if they hadn't, I was planning on going. Before I could leave, my stepmother stopped me. "Ethan, your father told me everything last night. I want you to reconsider. The daughter of Senator Vance would be a huge asset to you and to this family. I was the one who went to the Vances to arrange your marriage to the younger sister, but that was because Isabella had made a foolish mistake. I'm told she has completely cut ties with that poet. All you have to do is say the word." How did she know they had cut ties? And even if they had, why would I want to marry a woman with a tarnished reputation? Her pleas were transparent. She didn't want to offend the Van Cess, securing another powerful ally for her own son. I searched for the right words to refuse. Then I saw my old nanny behind her, subtly shaking her head. "Thank you for the advice, Mother," I said carefully. "I will certainly give it serious consideration." I knew you'd see the big picture. You were always the most sensible one. Believing she had convinced me, my stepmother left, satisfied. After she was gone, my nanny pulled me aside and told me what had happened in D.C. while I was away. After I deployed, Julian Rios had taken the bar exam and failed. The setback seemed to drive him mad. He organized a group of other failed candidates, and, flying the Vance family flag, they ambushed the presidential motorcade on its way to a prayer breakfast. They staged a protest, alleging corruption in the exam process, but had no proof. In the chaos, they startled the First Lady's car, nearly causing an accident. The president, enraged, had all the protesters arrested. To save himself, Julian blamed Senator Vance, claiming he was acting on the senator's orders. Though the senator eventually cleared his name, the president fined him 6 months' salary as a penalty. Isabella had wanted to plead for Julian, but then she discovered he had been having an affair with his personal assistant, who was now pregnant. In a fit of rage, Isabella had the assistant fired and ruined her reputation. The story exploded. The daughter of a senator, not only shacking up with a man in her family's guest house, but also vindicatively destroying a pregnant woman's life out of jealousy. Isabella's reputation for being wild and ruthless was cemented throughout the capital. But it didn't end there. Julian's brother, the one Isabella had found a job for managing dock workers, had also caused a disaster. Given a taste of power, he had exploited the workers mercilessly, skimming their wages and resorting to violence. When one of the workers died, he was arrested. Following his brother's example, he blamed the Vance family. The president was furious. He ordered Senator Vance to control the public outrage or resign and retire in disgrace. The First Lady also punished Isabella, ordering her to handwrite formal letters of apology to every family she had offended and confining her to the house for 3 months of reflection. The Vance family's image was in tatters. They desperately needed an alliance with a celebrated hero to salvage their reputation. And I was the perfect candidate. No wonder Isabella had made a point of greeting me at the parade. No wonder the Van Cess had sent a car for me this morning. I now knew exactly how to proceed. When I arrived at the Vance estate, the entire family was waiting outside to greet me. The senator, his wife, their sons, Isabella, and Claire. They had rolled out the red carpet. Claire stood off to the side, watching me from a distance with gentle eyes. I saw her immediately. She was even more stunning than I remembered. She wore a pale yellow dress that cinched at the waist, accentuating her graceful, swan-like neck. Her skin was porcelain white, her face luminous. With her dark hair and red lips, she stood there, a vision of elegance. Seeing her, I could imagine her mother must have been a great beauty. It suddenly made sense why the senator would risk his wife's legendary wrath to keep a mistress. Mrs. Vance's jealousy and fierce temper were well known in D.C. society, traits Isabella had clearly inherited. The Van Cess were overwhelmingly enthusiastic, welcoming me as if I were a conquering hero. Isabella rushed forward and latched onto my arm like a vine. I subtly extricated myself while greeting her brothers. She wouldn't give up, grabbing my sleeve instead. Isabella was wearing a bright red dress. She had always favored bold colors, which I used to find lively and bright. But now, the color only seemed to make her sallow complexion look duller. The family, oblivious to my true intentions, led me happily into the dining room, where a magnificent feast was laid out. At the table, the senator raised his glass. "Ethan, my boy, your victory is the talk of the town. The president is sure to reward you handsomely. A true hero and our family's finest son-in-law." Mrs. Vance smiled warmly. "Indeed, Ethan, you've done us all proud. For the gala tomorrow, you can bring a member of your family. I've had a new suit made for you and a matching gown for Isabella from the finest silk. You two will look perfect together." Isabella, sitting next to me, leaned in closer. "That's right, Ethan. Mother had the best designer in Georgetown work on them. We'll be the stars of the evening." I laughed to myself. How pathetically transparent. When I was just a guy chasing after their daughter, they treated me like I was invisible. Now that I was a war hero, I was their honored guest. My gaze drifted to the far end of the table, to Claire. Her eyes were downcast, a shadow of sadness on her face. I spoke, my voice calm and clear. Mrs. Vance, you seem to be mistaken. My fiancée is your younger daughter, and tomorrow I will be escorting Claire to the gala. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. I smiled at her, and the gloom on her face vanished. The smiles on everyone else's faces froze. Mrs. Vance's expression turned ugly. Isabella was the first to react. Ethan Cole, don't be an ass. Don't think one victory makes you some kind of big shot. I am the daughter of Senator Vance. I'm willing to lower myself to marry you, and you have the nerve to play hard to get. I ignored her. I walked over to Claire and said softly, I'll pick you up tomorrow. She nodded obediently. Okay. With that, I excused myself, leaving the Vances to their shocked and varied expressions. None of them knew that the next day's gala would change Isabella Vance's destiny forever. The next day, I went to pick up Claire for the gala. When she walked out, she took my breath away. She wore a gown of soft blue silk that flowed like water as she moved. Her dark hair was swept up, held in place by a crystal pin carved with blue flowers. A faint blush colored her perfect, oval face like a rose blooming in the dawn. Her beauty was so delicate, so ethereal. She looked like a goddess descended from the moon. I was completely captivated. She took the car, and I rode alongside on horseback. Even though she was my fiancée, our wedding date wasn't set, and I wanted to protect her reputation. At the event, everyone crowded around to congratulate me. People who had once looked down on me were now falling over themselves to be friendly. I responded to all of them politely. These were men I would be working with in the future, after all. That's how the world works. You have to shine before anyone will see you. People noticed Claire by my side, their eyes filled with unconcealed admiration. This was her first major social event. She had never been invited to the endless galas and parties of the D.C. elite. Those were reserved for Isabella. Finally, someone couldn't contain their curiosity. Major Cole, who is this lovely young lady? I turned to Claire and said, Oh, please forgive my oversight. Allow me to introduce my fiancée, Claire Vance. Nods of understanding went around the room. After Isabella's public meltdown, everyone in D.C. knew I had switched my affections to the younger sister. So this is Senator Vance's younger daughter. Miss Vance, you are absolutely stunning. The Major is a lucky man. You're too kind, sir, Claire replied, curtsying gracefully. Just then, Isabella entered the ballroom, dressed like an exotic, flamboyant bird. She had come with her father and shot a venomous glare in our direction. Before the dinner began, an aide read the list of official honors. Most were standard, bonuses, medals, and the like. I was the only one who received a personal gift from the president, a historic Georgetown townhouse, a perfect place to start my new life. In addition to the gift, the president promoted me to the rank of brigadier general. The military was short on senior officers, and with General Harrison nearing retirement, it was clear to everyone that I was being groomed for a major leadership role. During the dinner, I was the center of attention. I made sure to fill Claire's plate and deflected endless offers of drinks for her. Across the room, Isabella seethed, trying to get my attention by flirting ostentatiously with the men around her. The president was in high spirits. He noticed Claire beside me, a puzzled look on his face. He knew Isabella, especially after her recent scandals. He had personally endorsed my match with the senator's daughter, yet Isabella was not the woman at my side. Sensing his confusion, I rose to my feet. Mr. President, this is my fiancée, Claire Vance, the senator's younger daughter. You endorsed our union all those years ago. Claire also stood and bowed respectfully. The president's gaze shifted to Isabella, a thoughtful expression on his face. Senator Vance quickly stood to explain that Claire was indeed his daughter, born on the same day as Isabella to another wife. Lying to the president about the identity of the bride could have disastrous consequences for both our families. The president's doubts were eased. He smiled. I had no idea the senator had such a strikingly beautiful daughter. Sir, I am eternally grateful for the match you made for me all those years ago, I said. And I would be so bold as to ask for one more favor. Anything for our hero, General. I would like to ask you, sir, to choose an auspicious date for our wedding, so that we may be married soon. The president, delighted, boomed. Excellent. December 18th is a fine day. I will officiate the ceremony myself. Thank you, Mr. President. Claire and I exclaimed in unison, bowing deeply. The president continued, a glint in his eye. Since the Vance daughters were born on the same day, let them be married on the same day. A confused silence fell over the room. I was baffled. Was he suggesting I marry both of them? The Choristanis have been most cooperative since the treaty, the president announced. As the victors, it is our duty to show some goodwill to foster future trade and relations. The Emir's birthday is next month. We should send him a gift to show our sincerity. We will send him Senator Vance's eldest daughter as a gesture of peace. She will depart for Karastan on December 18th. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone understood. This was not an honor. It was a punishment, a severe one. The Emir of Karastan was nearly 60. He was old enough to be Isabella's grandfather, and she was being sent not as a bride in a formal diplomatic marriage, but as a birthday gift, a possession which lowered her status even further. After a long moment, Senator Vance dragged a resisting Isabella to her feet to thank the president, his voice cracking. To refuse was to defy a presidential directive, an act that could ruin his career and our family's alliance. To agree was to accept the president's punishment for the Vance's recent transgressions. After this, the slate would be wiped clean. The source of all the trouble, after all, had been Isabella herself. Isabella's eyes were filled with despair. She couldn't believe it. In the space of a single evening, her life and Claire's had diverged so dramatically. Claire, the girl from the shadows, was now engaged to a celebrated general, with the president himself officiating her wedding. And she, the privileged daughter of a senator, was being shipped off like a parcel to an old man's harem in a foreign land, her future uncertain. In truth, her fate had been sealed the day she brought Julian Rios to the guest house. The gala ended late. Claire and I shared a town car on the way back. With our wedding date now set by the president, we didn't need to worry about appearances. The car was filled with the faint scent of wine and Claire's delicate perfume. It was intoxicating. Claire rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. Suddenly, the car lurched to a halt. "General," the driver said cautiously. I opened the door. Isabella was standing in the middle of the road, blocking our path. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face a pathetic mask. "Ethan, please, you have to help me," she begged. "I don't want to go to Karastan. I don't want to marry that old man. I don't want to be a gift. Please, Ethan, you're the only one who can save me now." Seeing her so broken, I felt a pang of sympathy. I remembered the night before I left for the war, feeling just as helpless. But where was Isabella then? She had trampled on 8 years of my devotion. Her pleas now were not born of remorse, but of a selfish desire to escape her fate. "This was a direct order from the president," I said, my voice weary. "What can I do?" "No, you can do something. You're a hero in his eyes now. If you go to him and tell him you want to switch brides, that you want me, he'll agree. Let Claire go to Karastan. She's just the daughter of a mistress. What right does she have to take my place?" At her words, I felt Claire flinch in my arms. Isabella must have bullied her relentlessly for years. A cold anger rose in me. Before I could speak, Isabella screamed, her voice hysterical. "Ethan Cole, you know you love me. You've always loved me." Hearing those words, I tightened my grip on her sister's small hand and said calmly, "Isabella, the only person I love now is my wife." Claire looked up at me, her eyes shining with gratitude. Isabella stared in disbelief. "Fine, just fine," she spat. "The unwanted son of a dead first wife and the bastard daughter of a mistress. You two are a perfect match. Just forget I ever said anything tonight." A flicker of pain shot through me. The unwanted son of a dead first wife. So that's what she had always thought of me. But it didn't matter anymore. I squeezed Claire's hand. I had something better now. "In that case, Miss Vance," I said evenly, "I wish you a pleasant journey to Karastan." She stomped her foot in frustration and ran off into the night. After that, Isabella never bothered me again. I heard her mother went to see Claire several times, trying to bully her into switching places with Isabella. This time, even when her mother locked her in her room, Claire refused to yield. I used the president's gift of a new townhouse as an excuse. I had Claire come over every day, ostensibly to help me oversee the renovations, but really to get her away from her toxic family. I knew her mother and sister were desperate, and there was no telling what they might do. The safest place for Claire was with me. We both counted down the days until our wedding. The day finally arrived. The Vance family, at least, maintained a sense of propriety. They provided Claire with everything a high society bride would expect, including a generous dowry. With the president officiating, they couldn't afford to look cheap. Besides, with both daughters departing on the same day, a meager trousseau for Claire would only fuel rumors that they mistreated her. Only Senator Vance attended our wedding. The rest of the family went to see Isabella off. I heard she fainted several times and tried to flee her transport, only to be restrained by government agents. Her mother cried so hard she could barely walk and had to be supported by her maids all the way to the airport. It was a tragic scene. The onlookers all murmured the same thing. If only Isabella had behaved herself and honored her engagement to the general, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Our wedding, by contrast, was a joyous celebration. Night fell, and the guests departed. The wine from dinner had worn off, and my mind was crystal clear. Claire snuggled against my side, curled up like a contented kitten. A profound softness filled me, followed by a slow, rising heat. I gently traced the curve of her warm cheek. Her face was like the moon, her lips like fire. I leaned in, my hand covering her delicate wrist, and gently pinned it above her head. Then, I lowered my lips to hers and savored her sweetness. The feeling of two souls merging with complete trust and openness was beyond words. At first, Claire was nervous and shy, but she soon grew into her role as the lady of the house. My days were spent training new recruits at the base. She managed our home. It was a simple household. No overbearing elders or children yet, just a butler, a few staff, and her personal maids. Claire ran everything perfectly. She planted flowers all over the property, so that no matter where you walked, you were greeted by a faint, calming scent. It was a balm to my soul after a long day. Every evening, when I came home, a delicious meal was waiting for me. Her mother was from the South, and Claire had inherited her culinary skills. She was a gentle soul, her voice soft, and her manner calm. Claire loved wine, and she planted a grapevine in our garden. The vine had already covered the arbor. Come fall, we would harvest the grapes and make our own. After dinner, we would often sit under that grape arbor, talking, reading, or sketching. I loved this quiet, stable life. I could already picture our future children playing under the vine's shade, taking their first steps, learning their first words. I heard that Isabella's life in Caraston was difficult. Her arrogant and domineering nature was quickly beaten out of her by the emir's other wives. She was now, they said, meek and obedient. But news like that was just wind blowing past my ears. It left no impression on my heart. The grand passion of my youth had slowly faded away, replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of a life well lived. It had vanished without a trace.